Hi there, welcome to this very first episode of P is for Plog. So it's a new podcast that I'm just doing on my own, and it's just going to be all about plogging and my way of life. Now, the purpose of this is not really to be a professional straight off, just to get used to doing podcasts and just to try and learn from it. So apologies for all of the mistakes I'm going to make, and it's going to be a fun journey, I'm sure, that we're going to be on, but hopefully you're going to learn something. Anyway, I suppose I need to have a bit of a theme tune, and I've got something lined up. My son's going to hate me. So this is actually a song that we wrote around the pandemic time. He really is going to hate this because he's now studying music at the Music Academy in Utrecht. So, but let's go. I'm going to play it all the way through for the very first episode. My name is Paul. This is my way of life, and this is Plog It, written by yours truly and performed by my son. Plog it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plog it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plog it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plog it, 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 plog it. Every time you go for a run, just try plugging and have some fun. Picking up just a handful of litter feels like being sprayed in unicorn glitter. It makes the run not just really you. It helps the world get clean too. People will shout, well done then, mate. It's something that'll make you feel great. So next time you step out of the door, pick up something that needs to do more. He's going to hate me for that. But if he wants to do something new, then I'm quite willing for him to join me. So I'll cut that one down for the next episode. But for the first episode, I thought I'd give you the full-blown song that we did. So it was a lot of fun just doing that. There's a whole video that goes along with it on Instagram. So what's all this podcast about? Well, it's just going to be me going through and talking about subjects, as well as just talking about my week that I've done of plogging and picking up trash. So I'm now a professional plogger. Now, I suppose the first question is, what is a plogger? So for those that don't know, a plogger is someone that picks up trash, and I just do that daily. So every time I go running, I will pick up some trash, and I run a lot, so I pick up a lot of trash. I run around 4,000 kilometers a year, so that's roughly around 11, 12 kilometers a day, and I pick up per year 40,000 litres of trash. So that's around 100 litres of trash on average a day. I'll be going through the stats of each week at the end of the episode of each episode, but today's subject, let's get straight into it. Well, today's subject is P is for Paul. I'm just going to introduce you to who I am, just give you a little bit of background into what makes me tick, where I come from, and why I'm a Brit in the Netherlands. So let's start with the basics. So I'm 57 years old. I was born in England. And in fact, I was born in a place I'm really proud of. I was born in Hartfield, which is a very small village in East Sussex, so just between London and Brighton. And it's the place where Winnie the Pooh's written. In fact, when I first started running when I was 13, just to sort of try and lose weight. And the route that I did with a friend of mine called Michael Foster, we went around the Pooh Bridge area. So yeah, Winnie the Pooh is very embedded into my psyche. Maybe I look a bit like him, although I do wear pants. So yeah, so I was born in this place called Hartfield, grew up there, loved it, loved the village life. And then I suppose let's cut to how I moved to the Netherlands. I will come back a little bit to my childhood because that has a very important role in my life and how I've started plogging. But I just want to talk about how I moved across to the Netherlands. So I was working in London at the time. So this is in the 2000, so around 98 through to 2000. I was working in London, and I met a Dutch woman. We sort of fell in love, and we decided to have kids. But rather than have kids in London, she really didn't want that. She wanted to move back to the Netherlands, and fully supported that. And so the option was quite simple. Wherever you get a job, we will move to. And I got a job in Amsterdam. So we moved across in the end of 2000. It was a bit of a chaotic period because I was actually doing New York Marathon. So I got the job, and then 2 weeks later I had to start. But between that, we had to sort of go to New York and for me to do the marathon. So Karen had to sort of come across for the weekend and try and find a place for us to live. She actually found a place on the opposite side of the canal where I was working. So it was a bit weird. I was working at number 537 and I lived in number 532. It was right next to the mayor's house in the Herengracht in Amsterdam. It was a crazy, but we were used to London prices, so we didn't know anything better. It was the smallest apartment that you could imagine. You could actually literally step out of the bed and go step into the shower. It was just that crazy. So the other thing that you could do is there was, as in many of these houses in the Netherlands, and especially these old houses, it was held together by bolts, and there was this huge iron pipe bolt thing going through the toilet, just holding it onto the wall, holding it onto the rest of the building, which was quite good when you're drunk because you could literally just hang on to the pipe with your hand as you're going to the toilet. So I did that a few times. But it was a great introduction because we were right in the centre of Amsterdam. And I remember my first ever Queen's Day. So for those that don't know, the Dutch really go a bit crazy celebrating the Queen's or the King's birthday. And on that day, I got the best time ever because it was one of those years when it's nice weather. So when the nice weather, it makes it into a real party. And I looked out the window and the canals were just full of it was a sea of orange of people just partying. It was crazy. So I just thought, what are these Dutch people doing? It was completely crazy. So we lived there for about a year, just over a year, and enjoyed it. But Karen got pregnant and we needed to find a place. So what we did was we drew a circle around a distance around where I was working, just around 20 kilometers or so circle. And that we went, right, that's kind of the distance that we want to be. Should be able to get some greenery, should be able to get a garden, and it's a perfect distance for me to cycle into work. And that literally was what I was doing. For 10 years, I cycled into work every day from Haarlem, where we moved into the centre of Amsterdam, and it was fantastic. And I still miss it to this day. Just that beautiful morning bike ride or evening bike ride, even in bad weather, it just brought a smile to my face. And so 10 years I worked there. And then after that, I got another job. I was actually working in London, but based in Haarlem. So I was just working remotely for most of the time. And that sort of went on to sort of another part of my life. But I think I'll hold that for another time because I really want to sort of talk about how plogging first got involved into my life. I'm not going to talk about my very first plog. That was in 2017, my official one. But I'm going to talk about a little bit before that and then just sort of show you how sort of karma works. So it's pre-2017. So this is, scrub that. So I actually did my first official plog in 2011. So this is in the noughties. So this was in 2008, something like that. And there's a couple of stories that I like to think about when I talk about my pre-plogging plogs. So even though I officially wasn't plogging, I was doing it, but I was doing it for the wrong kind of reasons. I was doing it to try and win the lottery. I thought, if I pick this piece of trash up, then I might get some good karma. And I never did. And in fact, I usually got bad karma from not picking up trash. So there's two stories that I like to sort of remember. The first one, I was actually running into work. So the distance from my home to work was around 22 kilometers. It was around a half marathon. And what I liked to do was do that every day on the bike. I had this simple rule of if I can get to the end of the street without falling off, then I can get into town, into Amsterdam. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. It's the worst road in terms of if ice hits, was actually just outside my street. Okay, it wasn't being sorted or anything like that. So I knew if I could get to the end of the street without falling off, then I could make it all the way in without any problem. There was a couple of times I fell off on that 100 meters to the end of the street. So, but most of the time I could get in. I think it was around 5 days a year I couldn't cycle into work. But I didn't just cycle, it was also an opportunity to run into work. So it was a nice half marathon in the morning. So what I'd do is I'd run into work and then get the train home. And I'd do that, try and do that once a week. And that was a lot of fun. So there was one time, so moving on to the two plogging stories I've got. One is about running and the other one is about biking. So the first one was when I was running into Amsterdam. So it was about 6 a.m, something along those lines. And I was just running along and I remember seeing there was just so much trash in those days, and there still is on that road, on that bike path that you go into Amsterdam from Haarlem. It was just full of trash, and you just look down at it all the time. Occasionally I'd pick up some pieces of trash, but not too often. And the one time when I didn't pick it up, I just suddenly went, oh, what was that? Sort of bent down, looked at the sole of my foot, and there was a great big piece of glass that was just sticking into the sole of the trainer that I was running on. And this was the days when they had those sort of gel pockets. I was actually running on an Asics at the time, Asics Kayano, and it had a great big sort of gel pocket in the back. And I just popped the gel pocket, so that destroyed that complete shoe. So pick up trash. If you don't, you might get a puncture. And so I got a puncture on that time. The other one I like to talk about in terms of plogging was really showing how karma hit me on those. I was cycling back home one day and it was beautiful weather, and as there was this lovely straight where you could really get some speed up, and if you were lucky you could sort of just latch onto a moped or onto a motorbike that was just going along there, and you could sort of just draft behind them and get up a decent speed. And that's exactly what I was doing. There was this moped with a passenger on the back, and I was just scooting along behind them for this straight section. It was about sort of 2 kilometers long. And then the passenger just took out a cigarette and then just threw the packet on the ground right in front of me. I'm just a few meters behind, and I just got so grumpy when she did this, and I thought, oh, I really should say something. But I'm cycling like mad, just trying to keep up and sort of draft onto this, because it was probably going around, I don't know, sort of close to 50 kilometers an hour. And so I was just full on out, and there's no way I could overtake it. But for the next 2 kilometers, I was just getting so grumpy, thinking, oh, how could they do that? I really should take them, but they lost me. I got dropped, and I couldn't do anything about it. But all the rest of the way home, I was just so grumpy, saying, I should have done something. Got back home, and I went through the little walkway that goes to the back of our house. And just at the back of our door, I looked down, and there was a packet of cigarettes, and it was the same brand that had just been dropped by that girl on the back of the moped. And I thought, I knew I should have said something. So those are just sort of two of the stories. So even though I officially didn't plug, I was sort of picking up trash, and yeah, but I didn't officially do it. I was just doing it for good karma points. So those are sort of two stories that I like to sort of tell, but I mean, there are plenty of other ones. Another good one was when I was cycling, I decided to buy these. I was so determined that I was going to cycle every day, even in the snow, even in the ice, that I bought these spikes, these snow spikes for my bike on just special tires that had some studs in them. And I thought, oh, I'll just use those. And so I put those on my bike, and I was just cycling in the snow, and the tire, they weren't suitable really for what I was trying to do, and the rim burst, and the bead on the tire just completely snapped. Nothing I could do about it. I was completely stuck. But of course, it's 6:30 in the morning. I'm stuck at a place called Halfweg, which actually means halfway. So I'm halfway between Haarlem and Amsterdam, sort of 6:37 in the morning, with nothing to do, and I can't do anything in the snow. I was like, okay, what do I do? I don't really want to sort of just push it 10 kilometers in that direction. Don't want to push it 10 kilometers in the other direction. So I literally just stayed in Halfweg until the shops opened up and I was able to buy a new bike tire and then just get it fitted. So I think I had to sort of wait for a couple of hours. Would have been better actually to go into town, but yeah, I've got loads of stories of how that journey really was an adventure. And I suppose when you look at what I do nowadays in terms of adventures, I'm really keen on making adventures start from out the front door. And without realizing it, that's exactly what I was doing back in then. So 20 years ago, when I was cycling into work, every day was an adventure, and it just started from my doorstep. And I think that was just such a wonderful period of my time. I really enjoyed that. But I want to skip to 2017 to 2017, and that was really when my life changed and it's actually led to where we are now with this podcast, with me becoming a professional plogger. More on that in a different episode. But yeah, in 2017 I had a bit of a life change, a huge life change. I was already plogging by then, but it wasn't as important as it is now. I was just doing it sort of daily, and I was still passionate about running, but I was really more of a triathlete. I'd done a couple of Ironman races, and I was trying to kid myself that I was a triathlete. In 2017, I don't recall it being the fact that it was my 50th birthday, but it coincides with my 50th birthday. And I asked myself a question. And that question was, am I happy? And I thought, and the answer was yes, I'm happy. So, yeah, what's the problem? But then I changed the question, and I changed it to, am I as happy as I was last year? Am I as happy as I was last month, as I was yesterday? And the answer was no. That simple rewording of the question to actually consider if I'm getting happier or if I'm getting sadder was so important. I was still happy, but I was ever so slightly getting less and less happy. And I thought, if that just carries on, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? If each day I get ever so slightly less happy, at some point, I'll no longer be happy. I'll be sad. I'll be depressed. Something needs to change. And so I did change. I used that as an opportunity to change my life. And it wasn't some sort of, okay, stop what you're doing now and do something completely different. It was just a case of, okay, well, when was I happy? What made me happy? What in my life was, what part of my life gave me deep joy? And that's what I looked back at. The first one was actually the triathlon. I looked back and I went, am I really a triathlete? I was calling myself a triathlete, but I was very rarely doing a triathlon. I actually did triathlons because we decided that I was doing too many sports. I should cut down and only do one sport. So I thought, if I do triathlons, I've got 3 in 1 then. But that's digressing. So I considered what I was doing, where my passion was in terms of sports. I love doing sports. I love doing sports daily. But was it triathlons that I loved? I thought about what I watched on YouTube. I'd get up in the morning and I'd watch some of these inspirational YouTube videos of sports. They were all trail running. They were all running. I wasn't looking at triathlon videos. I was looking at running videos. And I then thought, okay, well, what is it about triathlons that you love doing? Well, I do love swimming and I do love biking, but they're only part of the race to get to the running, where I really enjoy it. The swim, I always had panic attacks, but if you put me in a pool and it's just on its own, I love it. If it's a crowded pool, I hate it. The biking, I was biking all the time and I really loved that, but it really was for me just a means to get to the next discipline, which was the running. So I decided to no longer call myself a triathlete, and I became a runner, and that was it. And suddenly I reignited that passion for running that I had. It was so amazing it was a relief, really, to just say, no, I'm a runner. Also, triathlon is so expensive. It's just ridiculously expensive. So I could just focus on one sport. And the beauty of running is you can do it whenever you like. I am very much a solo runner. I love running in groups, but I love the fact that I can just put on some shoes and go out whenever I want to. I love the fact that it doesn't take too long, whereas a bike ride, if you want to get the same amount of effort out of it, you're doing 4 times as much. I love the fact that I can just put my shoes on and run. If I'm swimming, I have to spend a fortune on swimming pools, and they're always crowded, and I just do not like that. So running really became a focus of my life. It sort of brought back to that focus of what it used to be when I used to love running. I first started running when I was 13, originally just to keep fit, but it became so much quickly, something that was so deep to my soul. And that's true today. Whenever I go running, there's joy on my face. Doesn't matter even if it's a bad session. Doesn't matter if even it's a hard session. There's still joy. And that really made a difference in my life. Just that one change alone really brought that back. The other thing I looked at was, this is a whole topic in its own, so I'll just skim over it. But in the late 80s, I went vegetarian for 3 years. I went off to do a postgrad somewhere, and I thought I could do whatever I want to be and no one will question it. So I thought, I'm going to go vegetarian for a year. No one's going to say, but Paul, you just eat chicken wings like mad. No one's going to say that because they don't know me. So I went vegetarian, and I loved it. Loved it so much that after that 1 year postgrad, I still was vegetarian for 2 years. Eventually, I went back to meat, and being such a huge meat eater, and I did that for the next 20, 30 years. But I'd always be going, oh, that period when I was a vegetarian, it was the best of my life. I loved it. I felt so good. I just felt so wonderful within my body, just being a vegetarian. And I'd be saying that while I was chomping down on spare ribs. It didn't make sense, but I just loved meat too much. But going back to that decision, I thought, okay, this is a bit daft. And in fact, my daughter was actually vegetarian at that time. And I thought, if my 7-year-old daughter can be a vegetarian, why is it I'm finding it so hard to struggle? So what I did was, I thought, okay, I'm going to try and be vegetarian again. But I need to make sure that I can really do this. I don't want to just say I'm vegetarian and then give up 2 days later. So I secretly told my daughter, I'm going vegetarian. And then what I did for the next 2 weeks was I was vegetarian without telling anyone. Didn't tell my wife, didn't tell my son, didn't tell anyone. I literally had my hand shielding the plate so people didn't see that there was no meat on it. And what was amazing was I felt brilliant from it. I felt so much better. It was just a lightness of soul. It's a lightness of body. I always talk about how I can run so much now as a vegan compared to as I was as a meat eater. And it is so true. As a meat eater, I could only do 60 kilometers a week of running before I'd get injured. As a vegan, I can do 180 kilometers or more. It's just crazy. It just helps me recover better. It just helps me function better. The biggest way of describing it is when I get up in the morning, when as a meat eater, I'd have to take the stairs, go down the stairs one step at a time. As a vegan, I can just walk straight down the stairs. The difference was like light and day. It was amazing. So I went vegan. And then the next one is the plogging, or rather it's not plogging. I mentioned that I'd go back to my childhood. I'm going to go back to my childhood when I was 17. Going back to that question of what makes me happy. I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, when were the moments in my life that I was truly happy, when I was proud of who I was, when I felt good in my soul? And that was a 17-year-old. As a 17-year-old, I felt good. I felt proud of myself. I still sucked in so many areas. Trust me, if you saw my haircut, you'd be going, what the hell were you doing? If you saw my clothes choice and everything else, it was like there were so many things that I sucked at. And there are so many parts of that life that were not good. But there were a couple of things that I was really super proud of. I was ethical. I was caring. I cared about the world. I remember buying this book when I was a 17-year-old, and it was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the green book or something along those lines. And in it, it just listed all of the shops that were sort of animal cruelty free shops or anything. So Body Shop was in there, for instance, going back to the sort of, this was what, 87, something like that. No, earlier. And it was a book that I just studied. I loved that book, and it meant so much to me. And I bought a couple of other books as well. I was a person to be proud of. When people look back at 17-year-olds, or you might go on the street and or maybe your kids are 17 years old. How many times have you actually said, "Oh yeah, it's just naivety. They'll grow out of it"? I disagree. That was the person that I think we should all be, that person that I was then. He was idealistic, he was ethical, he cared. And I thought, I want him to be proud of me. I want to look back and go, I made him proud. He is the man that I've grown up to be the man that he wanted to be. I'd had all this 30 years between then, and I wasn't being that person. I was still, some people might say a nice guy, other people would probably say an awful guy. But for me, it was a person, he was so inspirational. And he is the yardstick that I judge myself on. I just want him to be proud of me. And so the plogging and everything I do now to try and improve my life is based around the question, would it make him happy? Would it make him proud? He was a good soul. It's amazing how you can lose yourself, but you can always find it back again. So that's really sums up a bit of my life history, a few sort of moments in my life that have made me who I am, that have got me to the point here where I'm embarking on a professional plogging career. And I'll talk about that more in another episode. But hopefully you found that sort of interesting. What I now want to do is going to do something that I do every week, or I want to do every week so I made a claim earlier on about doing 4,000 kilometers a year and 40,000 liters of trash. I want to hold myself responsible. So people can see that on social media. They can always sort of see what I've been doing and how much trash I've picked up, and I'm making it even more visible than before. So on Strava, you can see how much I've run, and on the Clean Something for Nothing app, then you can also sort of see all the cleanups I've done, and every activity has got a sort of the amount that I've picked up. I'm doing it in litres. But I've got some stats here. So now it's a little bit lower than it normally would be, just because I'm going to do this from the 1st of October. So we've got about a week and a half of stuff that I've picked up. But that was just straight after the Plogging World Championships and just after I got a cold. So it's not the best week to start, but hopefully you'll sort of see it get a bit more normalized in terms of running. So what did I do? Well, the first week of October, I got 58 kilometers. Now, normally I want to sort of try and get around 77, 80 kilometers of running in, but I got 58. So I was below what I needed to do, but that's okay. It was a recovery week, but I still managed to get 860 liters of trash. Now, to put a caveat on that, we had a cleanup event. So my monthly cleanup event I do from RunX called PlogX. So I organise that once a month, and we got 360 litres just on that. So of that 860, sort of 360 are are actually coming from that event, but it's still good. That was an above average week in terms of sort of trash. And then this week we're up to Friday. I'm still going to go and do a run this afternoon, but yeah, I think we're already up to 50 kilometers of running this week, so I should be well on to the sort of like 80, 90 kilometers by the end of this week. And in terms of trash, I think we're up to 430 liters. So that's bang on, really. You kind of want to do around 100 litres of trash a day, but some days it might be just a handful. Some days it might be sort of a lot. But yeah, I've had a couple of big runs that I've got a lot of trash in those ones. So that's a pretty sort of standard week. And the other thing I want to do is talk about the most unusual trash that I've got. I've actually got it in my hand here, so probably can't hear that. But today, on today's run, I actually picked up a baseball. Now, there's going to be lots of places in the world where a baseball's not very unusual to find, but for where I am, this is the first time I found one. So it's a nice baseball. I suspect it was for a dog or something, and then they're just using that, and then it just got dropped or something. So I got that one. And the other thing today, which is sometimes you find these treasures and you just got to go, what's the story behind that? I saw this. I was just running along, and then in the hedgerow, I just saw this orange plastic, and I thought, what the heck is that? So I sort of ran behind, and I went, oh my gosh, it's a spade. It was a brand new spade. It still got the label on it. So I don't know. I suspect some work team or something like that. Someone just threw it in the bushes and just left it there. But there was no sign of any workman or anything like that. So I couldn't. It's literally just there doing nothing. So I've taken it home. So I've now got a spade. And it's a really nice one as well. I'm really excited. I thought, oh, those are worth a fortune. Oh, this must be like 90 euros of spade goodness. And I looked it up on the internet. It was £24.99. But other than the fact it's not that expensive, I'm super happy with it. And it's going to be used in my garden. So there you go. A spade and a baseball. Those are the two most unusual, and both of them were from this morning's run. Hope you found this sort of interesting. As I say, it's going to be a bit of a... I'm going to wrap it up now, but yeah, this is just going to be me chatting and just telling my stories. Just again, practicing. We're making podcasts. Hopefully it's going to get improvement on the audio. I don't know what the audio is going to sound like. Hopefully I'm not going to have to do too many umming and ahhings. I think that's the biggest thing I'm worried about, and the really reason why I want to do this. I want to just make sure that I don't which I think I do a lot. So I'm a bit scared to play this back, but thanks for listening in. I hope you found it sort of interesting, a bit of background in there. And each week I'll do a different subject, as well as just doing a roundup of what I've done. And just to keep you appraised on how I follow this journey of professional plogger. It's something that I'm really excited about. For 13 years I've been picking up trash, and I've been doing it in my free time. Since October, this is now full time. I hope it works. If it does work, then I want to share that dream, and hopefully it can inspire other people to do it. In terms of inspiring, if you're inspired by anything I tell you, then I don't want you to do the same as me. I don't want you to make this your way of life. All I want you to do is just go out and pick up a piece of trash. When you pick it up, put it in the bin and think about how it makes you feel, because you just made a difference. You made an impact. With that, thanks for listening. Speak to you next week. Bye.